My name is Deborah J. Ward. To answer the inevitable question, I was not born in Hawaii, but I did arrive here in my teens from Pennsylvania to study here. As a recreational hiker, I visited Mauna Kea with my father, who was a physicist and an astronomer, and when there was only one telescope. It was the size of a garage, and all four of us stood in front of it, and we practically covered the telescope. The vast wilderness vistas of the highest peak in the Pacific were awe-inspiring, breathtaking, and absolutely serene. And from then on, I continued to use the trails and visit the summit of Mauna Kea, Kanakaleo Nui, and other places I was still able to hike to during the 1970s through the present. I felt it was my citizens' responsibility during these years to participate in dozens of hearings and meetings held to review, plan, and propose appropriate management of the natural resources associated with Mauna Kea. For example, I testified in support of the astronomers' request to introduce sodium lights to Hilo to reduce the glare of the night sky in the 1980s, and I convened a meeting of conservation activists and astronomers during the early 1980s to try and find a win-win approach to management issues. Following the hearings about the 1995 management plan, I joined a group convened to discuss management concerns. And some of the people in the group are here today. An issue of concern was the dysfunctional delegation of management between DLNR and the university, and the buildup of construction waste and trash in the region. There were several other issues, but that was one of the ones that comes to mind. And 20 years ago, while hiking on the summit of Mauna Kea with Nelson Ho and Fred Stone and Kathy Lauder in 1996, we discovered actions by the IFA and DLNR which directly violated the conditions in the BLNR approved management plan from 1983, approved in 1985. And that exhibit is one of my exhibits. Actions taken by DLNR and the IFA allowed the Subaru telescope developers to alter the slopes, fill the lower part of the cinder cone of Pu'uhauoki, trench the outer slopes of the cone, both of which were high-quality wekio bug habitat for the optical and electrical cables. They also buried trash in the bottom of the cinder cone. And this discovery was the nexus for my greater involvement in the efforts to improve the management of the highly delicate and fragile natural environment. This discovery and the growing concern within the community led to an legislative auditor's report in 1998 and follow-up audits in 2005 and 2014. And during this period, I reviewed various management plans, including the first management plan in 1977. I included the Landgraf comments. Mr. Liebert Landgraf was the DLNR administrator for the Division of Forestry, and his responsibility then was for the Conservation District. And his comments I thought were enlightening. And then I reviewed the drafts in 1983 and 85 and 89, and the management plan in 1995. The 2000 master plan, and later Dr. Kudrytsky's report to the legislature announcing a new plan, which is B17U, in 2006. In spite of his announcement at the legislature about a new master plan, we have actually not seen one yet. But as a result of the development of the 2000 master plan and the subsequent initiation of the UH Office of Mauna Kea Management, which we now call OMKM, I served at the request of OMKM on the Environment Committee since December of 2000. And I believe that the carrying capacity at the summit region had already been exceeded. And I worked with a committee of scientists working in the fields of biology, geology, and environmental management who formulated recommendations for a biological inventory and monitoring in 2002. We also identified data gaps and recommended studies to address them. I worked with Richard Crow regarding the UH Hilo's Hoku-Kea telescope dome replacement, and I wrote the Sierra Club letter of response in support of the UH dome replacement. And during this time, I was a representative for petitioner Sierra Club, at the contested case hearing for the Keck Outrigger Telescope project in 2003. And that highlighted the absence of a management plan, comprehensive management plan for the conservation district or for the UH managed areas. I gave testimony at hearings for the comprehensive management plan in 2009 and responded for Sierra Club to the draft EIS on the TMT. And I intervened as a pro se petitioner in the first contested case hearing held in 2011. When I consider the TMT project, I believe that development of 5 acres of telescope facility and the associated infrastructure on the last remaining unobstructed view plane facing Haleakala will significantly negatively affect my recreational experience. As a citizen, as a recreational hiker, I'm concerned about restrictions to public access on the Mauna Kea Access Road, and I submitted exhibits as examples of mismanagement and our efforts to address that access issue. A serious concern is the utter failure to address the impact the proposed project would have on religious, cultural, spiritual, and traditional practices of my friends, the Native Hawaiians. And with regard to the TMT, I submitted the Keystone Report, and I documented the federal funding aspects for the TMT, including exhibits B17AG, AH, AI, J, K, L, and M. In the EIS on Volume 1, it claims that the federal rules, such as the National Environmental Policy Act, do not apply to the project because no federal agency is involved in the project and no federal funding is being used for the project. The declaration in the FEIS to the contrary, neither a Section 106 consultation nor an adequate Kapakai analysis have been conducted. In addition to the issues outlined, I have noted an assertion by the university's witness, Tom Nance, that the TMT would have no impact on the hydrologic resources of Mauna Kea. But the master plan and the CMP and the FEIS do not support this conclusion, nor do exhibits B17V, W, X, Y, Z, and AA. In fact, these documents conclude that the hydrologic substrate underlying the summit region is not studied, nor is it understood, and the impacts to the surface and the underground resources cannot be described with any certainty. The unidentified issue here is the extreme cart before the horse failure to address the future of the current telescopes and the eventual decommissioning of the land-based telescopes already in place. The termination of the general lease is in 2033, which I used to think was a long way away, and now I don't. It provides an opportunity for the people of Hawaii to address the future land uses of the crowned lands held in trust for the benefit of Hawaii's people. It makes no sense to permit a telescope with a 50-year lifespan when only 3 to 5 years would remain on the lease at completion. This lease extension issue should not be resolved without a full and open discourse, and BLNR must not grant yet another permit that would make an unfounded assumption, putting the cart before the horse again. The unobstructed view plane, including the views of Haleakala and Pu'umakanaka, would have a new visual element. That's not insignificant. When you're looking at a vast, you feel is pristine landscape, and it's 180 degrees at least when you're looking out from the side of Pu'ukahau'ula, you see nothing in the distance except the beauty of the wilderness, the clouds, and Haleakala in the distance. Makanaka, Pu'umakanaka, Pu'upoliahu, there in the peripheral vision, but as far as the eye can see, it's beautiful and it's empty and it's wonderful. The open space is worth protecting. The water and the snow that are there are pristine because they fell from the sky without pollution, without contaminants. The high-level aquifers without control of point source and non-point source water pollution will be changed. The geologic terrain is a subglacial lava flow with glacial striations under the summit ridge, unlike the summit ridge. And it's a national natural landmark This is important. It's a way of the entire nation describing something that is so important to protect that they call it a national natural landmark. It identified the aesthetic qualities, the geology, the topography, and the morphology. The TMT would cause irreparable harm to the geologic landscape and the alpine stone desert ecosystem. The area where the TMT is sited is half a mile away from the area that on the summit ridge that is dotted with facilities. They're little like islands of facilities with wilderness in between. The area for the proposed new development is minimally disturbed. It's not close to an existing infrastructure, existing roads, any structures. It's on a geologic substrate that has not been previously developed. Unlike the cinder cones, this is a completely different substrate. It has an ecosystem that contains flora and fauna that are not found on the previously developed summit ridge, in an area with an unobstructed viewplane, with a vast array of historic properties in a designated historic district, impacting a traditional cultural property. To sum up, I'd just like to say that the University of Hawaii at Hilo has not met the burden of demonstrating that its proposed land use meets the criteria for protection of natural and cultural resources in the conservation district. The TMT does not conserve, protect, preserve, or promote the long-term sustainability of natural resources in the conservation district. And the proposed TMT cannot meet even one, much less all of the 8 criteria. The plans preferred by the university to justify its request to intensify the land use do not address the already cumulative adverse impact to the natural and cultural resources. The proposal does not provide effective, appropriate, or sufficient mitigation for significant and substantial cumulative impact that's already damaged the resources. And it doesn't describe mitigation that would appropriately or adequately address new development. And for this reason, it's the duty and responsibility of the Board of Land and Natural Resources to deny this proposal.
Explain a little bit about the recreation that you particularly, I mean, there's all kinds of recreation. There's playing in the snow, there's hunting.
I must admit that when my children were growing up, that we did do some snow play. I would not do that now. But back in the day, yes, that was something that the parents with children did, was go to the mountain and enjoy the snow and play with the boogie board and so forth. I look at it differently now. I have a different connection to the mountain than I did when I was in my 30s.
If the TMT is permitted and allowed to be built, will it injure you?
It will injure me. It will injure me in ways that I have a hard time explaining, but I fully believe that the summit has been built to its capacity.
How does it make you feel to see the magnitude of the movement at this time?
It's heartening and I think it reflects an awakening of people's sense that there are important places to be protected.
You do believe that not even one of the 8 criteria that is necessary for the CUA has been met, let alone all 8. Is that correct?
I do agree.
Thank you very much, Deborah.
In your mind, what is the distinction between authority over management and enforcement and the exception for astronomy facilities? Are they somehow to be managed and enforced differently than the rest of the mountain because they're under UH and not under somehow BLNR?
As I understand it, back in 1995, the Institute for Astronomy at the University of Hawaii at Manoa was the lead portion, the lead in the responsibility for astronomy facilities and what happened inside them, but that DLNR retained the responsibility for everything outside the facilities. Current management has changed.
Is there any such thing as an astronomy precinct on Mauna Kea?
No, I believe that the astronomy precinct is a concept. It has no boundaries,
It has no boundaries?
no identified boundaries.
No identified boundaries. It's a line drawn on a map.
That's correct.
How long have you been opposed to the telescope construction on Mauna Kea, generally?
Since about 2003,
Do you recall which project was the first project that you opposed?
yes,
And what project was that?
a kick-out rigger telescope.
Is it your position that you oppose the construction of any telescope in the summit region of Mauna Kea?
No, it's not.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Ward.
Good afternoon, Mr. Shinyama.
I just have a few questions for you. Before we start, I want to clarify, you are testifying here today in your individual capacity, is that correct?
In my individual capacity, yes, I'm retired from the university.
Okay, and that's how you moved to intervene in this case? Well, strike that. You're an original petitioner, is that correct?
I was one of the original petitioners.
And that was also in your individual capacity, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. You're not here testifying on behalf of the Sierra Club of Hawaii, is that correct?
I'm not, no?
Nor the Conservation Council of Hawaii, is
No,
that
I'm
correct?
not.
Or any other organization that you may be affiliated with, is that
That's
correct?
correct.
Okay. Ms. Ward, you're familiar with the astronomy precinct atop Mauna Kea, is that correct?
Well, I've seen the words written.
I understand that you have issues with the boundaries of the astronomy precinct or what it is, but you are familiar with what is called the astronomy precinct, is that correct?
I've seen the words written in documents, but I've never seen meets and bounds, and I've never seen boundaries.
Okay. Would you consider the astronomy precinct atop Mauna Kea substantially developed?
I don't believe there is an astronomy precinct, and I would not say that the descripted feature that's in the documents actually refers to anything that's substantially developed, but there is a portion of the summit ridge that contains approximately 13 to 21 telescopes if you include the SMA on the saddle.
And would you consider that area substantially developed?
I would say that there are roads and facilities there, and that's all.
Okay, and I will ask my question again. Would you consider that area that you just referred to that has these observatories, paved roads, and so forth substantially developed?
Well, since I'm not a land use expert, I'm not sure that I know the definition.
Now, you testified earlier, I believe, in response to Ms. Aluli's questions that it is your opinion that the CDOA takes an ethnocentric view. Is that correct?
I did testify to that, yes.
Okay. Would that be the same with respect to the cultural impact assessment?
I don't feel confident to speak to that, and it's not in my written direct. It's not really my background, and so I would prefer not to answer that.
We've been talking about, or you have been testifying about a comprehensive management plan. Is that correct?
I have testified, yes.
Okay. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you said that your opinion that it is a comprehensive management plan is required in this case by the administrative rules. Is that correct?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay, you did not say that.
No,
Okay, so it's not required by the administrative rules.
not the current administrative rules. They've changed since the year 2011 when the original testimony was given.
Fair enough. Actually, I will skip that. Ms. Ward, I appreciate your time. Thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Shinyama.